Knowing your electric guitar inside out. Over 10 years ago, I made a video where I rewired a Fender Strat, and to this day that video gets loads of views and lots of questions in the comment section. So originally I was going to update that video, but I've decided to do this slightly differently, and what I'm going to do is explain every component inside your guitar, which is quite easy because there's only literally a handful of components, so you can understand how the electrics work in your guitar. This way you'll know everything you need to know to upgrade, repair and even customize your own guitar. But something I'll mention to avoid any confusion is that this series of videos is really aimed at passive guitars. And for anybody who's not sure what this means, a passive guitar is any electric guitar that doesn't take a battery. And I'm not talking about the amplifier, I'm talking about the guitar itself. Some electric guitars take a battery in the back, and some have an active passive switch on them. And these guitars have more complicated electrics, so only some of what you'll learn in this series of videos applies to those guitars. But these videos are still a really good place to start. And to be clear, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or Einstein to understand the electrics in an electric guitar. It really is quite easy once it's been explained to you. In this video, we'll take a look at what a basic electrical circuit is, and we'll take a look at what problems can arise on your guitar circuitry and how to diagnose the problems. Firstly though, I'll introduce you to each of the components in your guitar, but I'm not going to go into any detail on any of the components in this video, as I'm going to do a dedicated video to each of the components so you can understand exactly what they do and how they work in your guitar. And then finally I'll compile them into a playlist. The first component then is the pickup, which transfers the energy from the vibrating strings into electrical energy that can then be used by electrical equipment like amplifiers to reproduce the sound of the guitar. The second component, which will only be present if you've got more than one pickup, is the pickup selector switch, and this just allows you to select one or more pickups so you can take the sound from that source. The third component is a potentiometer, and you can have one or more of these that are used for either the volume or the tone or both. The three components we've looked at so far can easily be seen because they're mounted on the front face of your guitar. You can see the pickups, the pickup selector switch and the volume and tone controls. However, inside the guitar, the next component is a capacitor, and this changes a potentiometer from being a volume control into being a tone control, as long as it's connected up correctly. The fifth and final component, which people don't really talk about but is just as important as all the other components, is the output jack, and this allows you to plug the guitar lead into the guitar, so without this you wouldn't be able to play the guitar. So as you can see, there's literally just a handful of components, and once you can understand properly what each of these components does, you can easily repair, maintain, upgrade and improve your own guitar without the need for a guitar tech. But in order for these components to work correctly, they have to be part of a working circuit. So Let's start by taking a look at what a circuit is. What is an electrical circuit? The easiest way to understand a circuit is like a racetrack. It could be a circle, or an oval, or any other shape, as long as it starts and finishes in the same place. To be honest with you, this shape doesn't really matter, as this is just an abstract to help you understand the concept. With an electric guitar, the beginning and the end of the circuit is at the output socket. And if you were to look at the full complete circuit, it would continue beyond the guitar, through the guitar lead and into the amplifier. Coming back to your guitar now, if the circuit inside your guitar isn't complete, then you'll have a problem and your guitar won't work. And the two most common problems you get with the circuit inside an electric guitar is an open circuit and a short circuit. An open circuit is where the circuit isn't complete, so there's a break in the circuit somewhere. And a short circuit is where the circuit completes too soon. So somewhere in the circuit, two wires are touching where they shouldn't. Now, when you get any fault on your guitar, it can manifest itself in two ways. Either a permanent fault or an intermittent fault. And whilst it sounds counterintuitive, the best of these two is to get a permanent fault. The problem with an intermittent fault is the minute you go looking for it, they tend to fix themselves and you can't find it, whereas a permanent fault is far easier to find. So when we discuss symptoms, they can be either permanent or intermittent, but still be caused by the same problem. How to diagnose and fix an open circuit. The most common symptom of an open circuit is a loud buzzing and no guitar signal. However, you can have a loud buzzing with a very quiet guitar signal. And this is usually a sign of what we call a bad earth, where the earth wire, either in the guitar or in the lead, isn't quite making a solid connection. So you need to find that connection and repair it. Another clue you might have a bad earth is that the guitar might buzz, but then go silent when you touch the strings. And this is because it's earthing through your body. To help you understand what a bad earth is, let's add another level to your understanding of what a circuit is. Whilst what you've already learnt about a circuit is true, and we'd normally start it and end it with a jack plug socket in an electric guitar, normally a circuit would start and end at the power supply. And in the case of an electric guitar, the power comes from the pickup, so this behaves like a power supply. And from a wiring point of view, a pickup is just a coil of wire. So you can see the wire still comes from the output socket round that coil and back to the output socket. So it's still creating a circuit there. However, when you consider the pickup, because it produces power, one wire coming out of the pickup should be the hot wire or the positive wire, and the other wire should be the ground wire or the earth wire. So a bad earth is when there's a problem in that earth wire or a partial break. or somewhere in that side of the circuit there's a weak connection. And from a practical point of view, the earth wire is usually black. The easiest way I can demonstrate an open circuit is to plug a lead into the amplifier, but then not plug it into the guitar. And to hear the sound more clearly, you can turn the amplifier up or turn the gain up if it's got a gain. Or you can even touch the tip of the jack plug, and this will create the buzz. And that's the sound that you get with an open circuit. If you think you've got an open circuit, but it sounds a little different, don't worry about it. The sound changes depending on what country you're in, because it depends on the frequency of the mains. Also, the sound can change depending on how many digital devices you've got around you, as these can create noise and processor chatter that will come through the open circuit. The reason it sounds like an open circuit when your guitar isn't plugged in is because your guitar is part of the circuit that consists of the guitar, the lead and the amplifier. So when the guitar's unplugged, the circuit is open. And this leads me on to the first tip, which is always have a spare lead. Even if it's a cheap nasty lead, always have a spare lead set aside. So before you do anything else, you can try exchanging leads. And this is because 9 out of 10 times when there's problems with electric guitars, it's to do with the lead. And this can save you taking your guitar apart unnecessarily. If you've got an open circuit, and if you know it's not your lead, then it can be caused by a bad or dirty contact, a broken wire, or a dry or broken soldered joint. If the issue is one of these, then we're going to have to take a look inside the guitar. And the place to start is with the output jack, as this is the second most common cause of wiring issues in electric guitars. If your output jack socket has been loose for a while, this could have easily caused the problem. Because of movement, the wire can break close to the soldered joint, or the jack plug socket can become turned around, so when you plug the jack plug in normally, it pushes against one of the wires and breaks it. Either way, you're going to have to resolder the wire into place. The jack plug socket becoming loose is a really common problem. So if yours becomes loose, tighten it up as soon as you can. The longer you leave it loose, the more likely it is that your guitar wiring will become damaged. I'm using a 1/2 inch socket here, which seems to work on most guitars. However, you can use a spanner or pliers. If you have to tighten up the jack plug socket, make sure you hold the back or make sure the centre doesn't spin, because this can cause the wires to break as well. The most common problem you get with output jacks is where the contacts have become dirty. And you can buy contact cleaner off the internet that you just have to spray onto the contacts, and this cleans them but also makes them more conductive so they'll work correctly. Otherwise, you can use wire wool to clean the contacts. The first of the two contacts is the ring round the mouth of the socket where you plug the jack plug in. And the second contact is inside the guitar on a piece of metal that bends in towards the centre of the output jack. And this second contact also can get bent, so you can fix the issue just by bending it slightly inwards. And this makes it grab onto the jack plug more firmly. However, only bend it a very tiny amount. If you bend it too far, you won't be able to get the jack plug in. They tend to last for years, so you tend not to have to change the output socket. But if you do, it's only cheap, or you can even get an upgraded one, like a pure tone jack socket. The next most common cause of an open circuit can be the pickup selector switch. And normally this is quite easy to diagnose, as you can hear the sound cutting in and out as you switch between the pickups. And normally it only affects one pickup. If you have this problem, it's usually caused by dirty contacts or corroded contacts. And the first thing you can try is just to flick back and forward between the pickups for 10 to 20 seconds. And just the act of flicking the switch back and forward can clean the contacts off. If this doesn't work, you can try spraying contact cleaner spray into the switch and then just switch it back and forward a few times. This usually does the job. With some of the better quality pickup selector switches, you can open up the guitar and actually see the contacts. With these, you can clean the contacts off. However, the cheaper Chinese switches are usually sealed, so there's no way of cleaning them. In my experience, it's very rare that you have to take the guitar apart and actually clean the pickup selector switch or replace it. Usually it's fixed quite easily using one of the methods I described earlier. If you do have a problem with an open circuit, hopefully it was one of the issues we've already described, so it's already fixed. However, if it still isn't fixed, unfortunately, the next step is to take your guitar apart so you can get at the electrics. And this can be very easy or very hard, depending on what type of guitar you've got. With an open circuit, once you can see the electrics, it's usually quite obvious where the problem is. What you're looking for is a break in a wire, or a crushed wire, or a soldered joint that's come loose, or something else where the wire has become disconnected. And you might have to poke the joint slightly, because you can get what's called a dry joint, where it looks like the soldered joint is good, but once you poke it, it moves away. These aren't so obvious to see, but if you just feel around, you'll find them. During this video, I've tried to keep the number of tools required to a minimum, so that anyone can fix their own guitar. However, you must have noticed by now, the one tool you can't really avoid if you want to do repairs and upgrades on your guitar's electrics is a soldering iron. So I'm going to have to do a separate video on how to solder, as this is a really useful thing to know and it's not difficult. The next of the two most common circuit issues we're looking at in this video is the short circuit. And a short circuit is where two wires of opposite poles are touching one another, and this causes the circuit to be cut short, so it misses components. And the most common symptom of a short circuit is absolute silence. No buzz, just silence. And the easiest way I can copy this symptom is by simply turning the volume right down. And the reason for that is if you look at the circuit diagram for a Fender Strat, you'll notice the closest component to the output socket is the volume control. And when you turn the volume right down, it creates a perfect short circuit, or at least it should. Just as with the open circuit, the most common place for a short circuit to happen is within the lead. So the first thing you should do to find the fault is try changing the lead. If it is the lead, and if the jack plugs aren't the moulded type or aren't sealed, then you can open up the jack plugs and just take a look at the contacts and make sure they're not touching each other. Even a single strand of copper wire can cause a short circuit, so make sure there's nothing but fresh air between the contacts. It's also important to note that the signal wire should never touch the outer case, especially if it's metal, and this is why there's a protective insulative tube around the wires, and if there isn't one, you want to wrap some insulating tape around the wires so they can't touch the outer case. If it isn't the lead, the next place to check is exactly the same as we did with the open circuit, and that's the output socket on the guitar. And again, what you're looking for here is that no two wires are touching. And again, even one single hair of the copper wire can cause a short circuit. And whilst you're inspecting the jack plug socket, it's worth plugging in a lead so you can make sure none of the wires are touching the jack itself. Unlike how we dealt with the open circuit, with a short circuit, there's no point checking the pickup selector switch, as if there is a problem with the pickup selector switch, the only way we'll be able to solve it is from within the guitar. So unfortunately, if you've still got a short circuit, now you're going to have to open up the guitar and take a look inside. And inside the guitar, what we're looking for is any two wires touching each other where they shouldn't. And I find a useful tool for this is a scalpel knife, as I can rub it between the connections to make sure there isn't one of those tiny copper wires touching between the two joints. And they are so fine, sometimes you can't see them. Another thing to look for that could cause a short circuit would be damaged insulation on the wire. The insulation is the plastic coating that's over all the wires. And this is there to prevent short circuits and to prevent the wire from touching anything it shouldn't. So if there's a missing piece of insulation, this can cause problems. If you find a wire with damaged insulation, you can tape it up or just push it out of the way to make sure it's not going to touch anything it shouldn't. When you're looking for a short circuit, bear in mind that the metallic finish on the back of the scratch plate or control plate is earthed and it's conductive. So if a connector or a wire is touching this surface, that can cause a short circuit. Looking here, you can see just how close the connectors get to that surface. So if a connector got bent slightly, it could easily touch that surface and create a short circuit. So you'll have to bend the connector back, because you can't remove or damage that metal surface because it's really important. It's screening or shielding, and it's to prevent your guitar from picking up too much electromagnetic background noise. I'll do a dedicated video just about screening later on in this collection of videos. If you arrived at this video because you've got an issue with your guitar, hopefully now you've got enough knowledge to locate it and fix it. And if you haven't got an issue with your guitar, hopefully you've got enough knowledge that if ever you do, you'll be able to fix it yourself. As I said earlier in this video, this is just the beginning of a series of videos where I'll go through each component one by one in detail, and we'll look at what they are, what they do, and how they can go wrong. And then you'll have an even better idea of things that can go wrong with your guitar, or things you can do to improve your guitar. If you want to see those videos, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload the new videos. Otherwise, if you're looking for free guitar lessons, go to www.ebooksforguitar.com, and there you'll find lots of free guitar lessons and the PDF ebooks that go with them. Thank you very much for watching, and well done for getting through to the end. And as usual, a really special thanks to the channel members who help keep the channel going and make it possible for me to make new videos. Thank you very much. And if you can afford it and would like to, please consider becoming a channel member. And finally, bye for now until next time.